Webster defines crunch time as a critical moment or period, like the end of a game, when decisive action is needed. Every sports fan knows this time in the game. Your palms sweat just a little more, your heart races just a little bit faster, and you live and die with every play until the final seconds tick off the clock and you're either celebrating a victory or disappointed by the defeat. The team at Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network understands just how critical these moments are. For us, it begins as soon as the next set of games are on the board. We evaluate the opening lines and any breaking news throughout the week. We cover each game inside and out, whether it's from inside the locker room to a huddle down on the field, the court, or the ice. We take you inside the meeting room with scouts, coaches, and executives. We have our fingers on the pulse of all the sports that we cover: the National Hockey League, NBA, college basketball, college football, and the National Football League. We are the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network, and we're here to help you find your sports advantage. After all the data has been crunched, we then turn it over to Kenneth for the best analysis around. His unique perspective in both understanding the data and how it applies to the game and how you win is the Crunch Time Sports Advantage. Are you ready? The Crunch Time Jet is fueled and ready for takeoff, and the Crunch Time Express is about to leave the station. Your VIP pass has been approved, so all aboard.
Welcome to the 2024 College Football Team Autopsy Report. An autopsy report is a document that summarizes the findings of an autopsy, an examination of a body after death. It includes details of the examination, tests, and observations performed, as well as the cause and manner of death. Just like a real autopsy report, the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network College Football Autopsy Report examines a team's body of work after the season has concluded. This report includes a review of the team's season win total and whether they met expectations, key offensive, defensive, and special teams metrics that shaped the season, a deep dive into coaching decisions, including situational play and fourth down aggressiveness, a final season grade, evaluating execution, performance in key moments, and consistency, the final verdict, analyzing what went right, what went wrong, and what must be fixed for 2025. With the 2024 season in the rearview mirror, it's time to examine the patient. To present the findings, we have called in our Chief Medical Examiner and Senior Analyst, Kenneth.
Welcome into the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. This is the 2024 Team Autopsy Report. We have the Fighting Illini on the table for this particular episode, and I got you for about the next 27 minutes, so let's not waste a lot of time. Let's get down to business. Let's start right there with the head coach, Brett Bielema. Folks, this guy can flat out coach, and he's done it really well wherever he's been. And I'm going to talk about that second stop briefly here in a moment. He took over for Barry Alvarez, who retired as the Wisconsin head coach, and all he did was lead that team to a really solid record. In 16 years as the head coach there, 16 years overall as the head coach, 7 at Wisconsin, 5 at Arkansas, and now the last 4 at Illinois. He has a plus 600 winning percentage. That I'm okay with. At Wisconsin, as I mentioned, 68 wins, 24 losses, 74% winning percentage. Let me just tell you, Wisconsin hasn't seen that kind of success since that guy left. He goes to Arkansas because he couldn't get the kind of commitment that he wanted from Wisconsin. It had to be the Barry Alvarez way. Okay? So he goes to Fayetteville. And in his 5 years, 29 wins, 34 losses. And I know you're going to say, well, didn't you just say he was a winner everywhere he's been? Okay, let's take a look. He takes over a Arkansas program that is an absolute joke. He goes 3-9 his first year. Okay, his next next season there after getting his program established. He goes 7-6 in 2014, 8-5 in 2015, 7-6 in 2016. And then they have a hiccup and goes 4-8. Arkansas decides to move on because he wasn't running the style of offense that they wanted to see run. They wanted throw it all over the yard like they were Texas Tech or Washington State or one of those outpost schools like that. So he goes back to the Big Ten, a conference that he's familiar with and a landscape that he's familiar with. Takes a little time to get the program up and going. Goes 5-7 his first year, 8-5. Then the setback to 5-7 to bounce back and go 10-3 last year. I'm telling you, folks, do not sleep on Brett Bielema. The guy can flat out coach. All right, let's talk about what we saw from the 2024 Fighting Illini, because I think that there's some interesting data points here for this particular team. So let's start where we always start, saying thank you for joining us, whether it's on YouTube or on our Twitter feed at Crunch Time VIP. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, I want to say thank you as well. And for all of you listening on the podcast, anything that I reference on the screen, don't worry, I got you covered. Okay, let's start with the season win total. Back in June, you could have got this season win total at 5.5. If you took that over, you were cashing that ticket before you were getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner. 9 regular season wins, as I mentioned. As we look at our in-season composite win total, 3 very unique but very predictive statistical categories that we look at. We had the Illini at a 7.8. So basically we had them as an 8 win team last year. They even topped that by a game. So I'm going to see if I can't look on the schedule and find that game that they won that we may have had some question marks from a data standpoint. All right, speaking of schedule, there are 2 statistical measures that we look at. Your strength of schedule and your strength of record. Now, your strength of schedule in a conference like the Big Ten, where you play a lot of conference games, you only control a small portion of your schedule. Your in-conference schedule is basically selected by just a random look at a draw as far as who you draw in conference, but who do you play outside of the conference? Now, strength of schedule wise, Wisconsin was at a .392, 59th out of 134 teams. So not the most challenging schedule. And then when we look at their strength of record, basically think of it as like your opponent's winning percentage, 0.523, 69th out of 134 teams. So their opponents were power ranked a little bit better than what their record was, and that wasn't great either. So let's take a look at that schedule and see if I can't walk you through why I come to that conclusion. Okay, we'll kick out the FCS opponent in Eastern Illinois there. Okay, the Kansas Jayhawks were 5-7. Central Michigan was 4-8. Nebraska was 6-6. Penn State was 11-1. Now we're in the conference play a little bit more. Purdue 1-11. Possibly one of the worst teams we've ever seen at this level of college football in recent years. Michigan was 7-5. Oregon had the undefeated regular season, 12-0. Minnesota was 7-5. Michigan State was 5-7. Rutgers was 7-5, and then ending the regular season with Northwestern, who was 4-8. You played 2 teams that had really great records, and then the rest of your schedule was So that's why we see their strength of record in the in the high 60s. Now, let's take a look at how good were the defenses that this Illinois offense went up against last year. We'll use a baseline of 68 because that's how many Power 4 teams we had last year. Kansas ranked 41st. Nebraska, the 14th best defense in college football for us last year. Penn State was 19th. Michigan was 21st. Oregon was 10th. Minnesota was 18th. Michigan State was 64th, and Michigan State 63rd. Rutgers was 64th. So 8 of their opponents inside of that top 68. And yes, 5 of them inside of the top 25. But outside of Oregon, nobody in the top 10. So you're looking at an average power ranking of 51. You're talking about a team that would probably be about 6-6, maybe 7-5, based on their defense. And I said that I would look and locate the game that they won that we probably would have had some questions about how they were able to get that win. Folks, take no further look than beating Purdue. Listen to the score, 50-49. Purdue was one of the worst teams in college football, and Illinois gave up 49 points to them. That's the game that we're going to circle, saying that, hey, you got that win. And it's always important to get the win, but wow, giving up almost 50 points to that Purdue team, not good. Now, let's get to the offensive breakdown here. We're going to go way next level here. Average team in college football scored 28 points per game. We're going to give you the NCAA average for the offense. We're going to give you the Illinois accounting stats number, or basically what they would have on any reference website. And then we're going to give you our adjusted for opponent number in that category. So as I mentioned, 28 points per game is the NCAA average. Illinois, 28.9 points per game. When we adjust for opponent, 29.2. So slight improvement there. Average team passing yardage per game, 227 yards per game. Illinois was at 214. Even when we adjust for opponent, it just goes to 217 yards per game. Average team ran the ball for about 160 yards last year. Illinois was at 151. When we adjust for opponent, does go up about 20 points to 174 yards per game. So their run game was a little bit better than what their statistical numbers will show. And then total offense, 387 yards per game. Illinois was at 366 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, goes up about 26 yards per game to 391. So when we adjust for opponent, they're just slightly better than the NCAA average was last year. Now, let's take a look at their drives ending in a score, touchdown or field goal. Average team last year was about 40%. Illinois, 48.6%. That's some serious production there. As far as their drives ending with a touchdown, putting 7 on the board. Average team last year, 29%. Illinois, again, 33.6%. And third down conversion, average team about 39%. Illinois, 44.6%. Now, here's where I had a problem with Illinois last year. Gave up far too many sacks last year. 30 sacks during the regular season. Average team gave up about 24 sacks there. And as far as turnovers committed, now this is where I like this unit quite a bit. 12 turnovers in the regular season. That is how you win ball games. Let's talk about the quarterback, Luke Altmaier. Had the opportunity to hit the transfer portal. Couple of universities were trying to upgrade at the quarterback position. Luke and his family felt comfortable there in Illinois, decided to stay there. Last year in 13 games, completed just 61% of his passes. Luke got to get that number up at least to 67, 68%. 2,717 yards, 22 touchdowns, 6 INTs. We're okay with the touchdown to INT ratio. Want it to be a little bit better, and especially given the few amount of attempts that he had. 1.7% of his passes were intercepted last year. You want that number to be below 1.4, really. Yards per attempt, 7.8 yards per attempt. Telling me he's not pushing the ball down the field, and only 209 yards per game passing. This pass offense needs to get much better. Now, let's take a look at the defense here for Illinois, and let's see if we get a little bit better on this side of the ball, or do we get worse? Again, we'll use that baseline number 68. We're going to look at how many of Illinois' opponents were power ranked inside of that top 68. Kansas was 23rd. Nebraska barely makes that cut line of 67. Penn State, 48th last year. Finished 11-1 in your offensive power rankings, 48. Interesting. Oregon, 11th best power ranked offense for us last year. Minnesota 58th. And then finally, Rutgers 46th. When you want to judge the Illinois defense, 6 of their opponents finish inside of the top 68. Here's the bigger eye-popping number. 4 of their opponents were outside of the top 100. Northwestern, 101. Michigan State, 103. Purdue, 108. And Central Michigan, 124. You're talking about an average power ranking of 69. You're now talking about a team that would be probably about a 5-7 offense week in and week out. So this Illinois defense was absolutely not tested nearly enough to warrant a lot of high standing there for us here at the Crunch Time Sports Advantage Network. Now for the defense, I'm just going to give you their accounting numbers for the categories and then what our number is adjusted. I think you're going to find there's going to be some adjusting going on here for Illinois. Their defense gave up 22.1 points per game. When we adjust for opponent, 22.6. So not even enough to sneeze at. As far as their pass defense, 222 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, it's 221. Again, no real adjustment there. Their rush defense, 150 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, does go up to 167. So just a slight difference there. And then their total offense allowed per game, 372 yards per game. When we adjust for opponent, does go up just slightly to 388. So no major swings there. I think this is where we're going to start to see a little bit of that turn here. Their opponents, drives ending with a score, 38.5%. Drives ending with a touchdown, 26.3%. Their opponents converting on third downs, this team had a hard time getting off the field. 43.7% conversion rate by their opponents. Did a good job of getting after the quarterback, got 28 sacks there. And their opponents converting on fourth down, 21 attempts, 10 conversions, about 48%. That's about 5% percentage points better than the average there. Did force 19 turnovers. So we like the +7 in the turnover differential, no question about that. If I had to bullet point this offense and defense, offense was efficient but lacked explosiveness. As far as the defense, bend but don't break is kind of the model that this unit had last year. And when we look at their 3 E's on defense, and I'll go back and give you the 3 E's for offense because I wanted to really highlight the separation of church and state here. So for their defense, the efficiency was 83rd on defense. Explosiveness was 59th on defense. And efficiency on defense was 66th. The Fighting Illini had the 67th best defense for us in college football last year. Let me go back and give you their offensive numbers here. As far as effectiveness on offense, they were 32nd. As far as explosiveness on offense, they were 48th. And as far as efficiency, they were 45th. Illinois was the 44th ranked offense for us last year. So as I mentioned, offense was efficient but lacked explosiveness. The defense had significant issues for us. Now, let's get to the special teams and then the coaching and situational play. Special teams, reliable but unspectacular. No question about that. 17 out of 21 as far as their field goal conversions, 81%. Very reliable. Made all but one extra point. Reliable. The punt game, problem. 3.5 punts per game, but only 41.1 yards per punt. That makes you 95th in our metrics. You're not flipping the field and you're not putting a defense that needed help in a lot of good positions there. As far as the situational play, the Illini was 4-1 in one-score games last year. That is absolutely phenomenal. We're looking at a team that was 3-3 against quality opponents. Not great, but not horrible either. And on fourth down conversions, 8 out of 16, just a tick below what the average is. And as far as going for it on fourth downs, former O-line coach like Brett Bielema, only 11.9% is how often he would go for it on fourth down. That ranks him 96th out of 144 qualifying head coaches. And as I'm getting the signal here in my ear, it's time to get to the offense and defensive splits for Illinois. Now, in their 9 wins, this offense was absolutely cooking with hot grease, averaging almost 35 points per game. The pass attempts, just 26 passing attempts per game in the wins, 222 yards per game passing, 8.4 yards per attempt, 13.6 yards per completion. We like the production despite the lack of passing yards. 8.4 yards per attempt is pretty much where you want to be if you're going to be successful. The 13.6 yards per completion is absolutely right there on the money. Their run game, 36 attempts per game. Like I said, Bielema, old offensive line coach there, 169 yards per game in those victories, 4.7 yards per rushing attempt. This team did not play with a lot of speed as far as plays per game, 62 plays per game, 391 yards of total offense in those wins, 6.3 yards per play. Phenomenal there. Their third down conversion rate, 45% on third downs, 70% in those victories on fourth downs. Only committed 6 turnovers in those 9 wins. In the 3 losses, only 11 points per game. The passing attempts go up almost 5 passing attempts per game to 31 per game. The passing yardage goes down to 191 yards per game. So a 31 yard per game difference despite throwing the ball 5 more times per game. 6.2 yards per attempt, 10.8 yards per completion. Not good. Still running the ball as far as attempts go. 31 rushing attempts per game, but for only 97 yards per game, 3.1 yards per rushing attempt. Again, just 62 plays per game in those 3 losses, but only 288 yards. A difference of 103 yards there. 4.6 yards per play. That's problematic there. You're not making any explosive plays and you're not getting any consistency from your offense. Third down conversions, they were still solid, 41%. However, on fourth downs, just 16% on fourth downs in those losses, and did commit 6 turnovers in those 3 losses. Let's take a look at the splits for the defense here. I think we're going to see some interesting numbers here. In the 9 wins, 20 points per game. Their opponents, 224 yards passing on 36 attempts, 6.2 yards per attempt, 11.1 yards per completion. Their opponents were running the ball with some success even in those victories. 33 rushing attempts per game for 131 yards, 4 yards per rushing attempt. About 355 yards allowed per game in those victories, 5.2 yards per play. I'm looking at their opponent's third down conversion rate in those victories, 42.5%, and a whopping 53% on fourth downs in the victories. Now that's surprising. Did force 18 turnovers in those 9 victories. In the 3 losses, defense only giving up 28 points per game there. Their opponents, 215 yards per game passing on 29 attempts. So the attempts go down. The yardage doesn't go down that much, so that's problematic. 7.5 yards per attempt, 11.3 yards per completion. That's still winning football there from your pass defense. However, the rush defense was the issue. Their opponents, 38 rushing attempts, so about 6 more rushing attempts per game. But the total goes to 205 yards per game allowed. A difference of 74 yards per game there. 5.4 yards per rushing attempt. You're not going to win many ball games when your opponent is able to get a first down if they run the ball twice. 421 yards per game allowed, 6.3 yards per play. That's not good defense there. Their opponents converting third downs, 51%, only forced 1 turnover in those 3 losses. So the defense didn't play horribly. They were just getting carved up on the ground. Looks like the issue was definitely more on the offense not being able to get the ground game going. So something to look at going into 2025. If Illinois can't run the ball, or if they're facing really good run defenses, that could be very problematic there for the Illini. Let's get to the final verdict here. The Fighting Illini will get a final grade of a B+. The reason why we've given them a B+, this team was solid. They were able to exceed their win total and expectations. Final verdict. Illinois took a major step, securing a 10-win season with a bowl victory. However, offensive inconsistencies and turnover struggles prevented them from reaching an elite level. If they address these issues, they can maintain their Big Ten competitiveness in 2025. So in our final moments, let's go ahead and get you those 3 keys right here, right now. First and foremost, Brett Bielema, your former offensive line coach, you know how important it is to have a very good offensive line here. So first and foremost, let's get the offensive line depth corrected so we can ensure the quarterback has a better pocket to throw from, and have a much more consistent run game. Key number 2, gotta limit the turnovers and ball security issues. This played its head in a couple of their games and prevented them in some games down the stretch where they probably could have turned some of those losses into wins during the regular season. And then key number 3, they must increase the red zone efficiency, being able to capitalize more on those scoring opportunities instead of getting field goals, getting touchdowns. If the Fighting Illini can improve in those 3 areas, this team can push for another 10-win season and potentially find themselves in the college football playoff.
Thank you for tuning into this podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and our deep dive into all things college football. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like this video and hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at CrunchTimeVIP for updates, insights, and more content. And make sure to visit our website at CrunchTimeSportsAdvantage.com for in-depth blogs, game previews, and information about our Crunch Time Express handicapping packages. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time for our next patient on the 2024 College Football Autopsy Report.